Garden Delights. I'm Pat Farnack with the WCBS Health and Wellbeing Report, sponsored by the Valley Hospital in Ridgewood, New Jersey. Even Celeste Longacre doesn't live entirely off the grid in rural New Hampshire, but she wrote the book Celeste Garden Delights as a guide to help people live more sustainable lives. While I find her philosophy so attractive, it does seem to be hard work.
Very grounding work. It's very calming work. You know, being outside in the garden, you listen to the birds. It's just lovely. I really like to cook. I really like to be in my kitchen. I'm enjoying each and every minute of each and every day.
Although not everyone can have a garden.
If you live in the city and you don't have time to have a garden, that's fine. But I think you can still take the time to put some blueberries in the freezer, put some corn in the freezer, or go to the farmers market and support the local farmers. That's, I think, where our national security comes from, actually, to be able to feed ourselves locally.
Next time, the return of the backyard chicken. The entire interview at cbsnewyork.com/health and wellbeing. I'm Pat Farnack, WCBS News Radio 880.
I'm Celeste Longacre. I'm the author of the book Celeste Garden Delights. Discover the many ways a garden can nurture you. And I do have a website. It's www.celestelongacre.com. And there is an E at the end of both of my names.
Your philosophy is so attractive, but it's hard work, too.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot of work, and I love the work. So It's very grounding work. It's very calming work. Being outside in the garden, you listen to the birds, and you have little squirrels running around. It's very, very soft, and it's just lovely. And when I put the stuff in jars or I put the stuff in the freezer, I enjoy doing that. I really like to cook. I really like to be in my kitchen. So it's something I'm enjoying each and every minute of each and every day. So it's really not that hard.
Well, Celeste, I live on 7 acres myself, and I have a rural background, and so I know what you're talking about intimately. But I guess in today's world, we many of us have to work in the city, and I guess it's a matter, isn't it, of focus. You don't want to lose that focus that you have really capitalized on.
Yeah, you don't want to lose that focus. I think the focus that I would prefer is that we need to really start to pay more attention to the local food industry, the local farms. If we can support our local farms, if you live in the city and you don't have time to have a garden, that's fine. But I think you can still take the time to put some blueberries in the freezer, or put some corn in the freezer, or go to the farmers markets and support the local farmers, because that's, I think, where our national security comes from, actually, to be able to feed ourselves locally.
To live a more sustainable life, you can do things like you have a big rain barrel that gathers water. And you can do that in the suburbs.
Absolutely. You can do that in the suburbs. You probably can do a compost bin in the suburbs. You might want to have a little bit of a garden. Even backyard chickens are coming back into vogue, which I think is a really good sign.
I would love to be able to do that, but there are so many foxes in our neck of the woods that I don't know.
Well, we have all kinds of stuff. We have foxes and fisher cats, and what we did was we built them Fort McChicken. We made it absolutely impossible for any animal to get to the chickens, and that's pretty much what you have to do. And I do, in my book, Celeste Garden Delights, I do explain exactly what we did. So if you're interested in having chickens, you really can have them anywhere, but you have to prepare their space to make them safe.
Yeah, and you did say that chickens don't mind a little bit of rain, but they don't like snow.
Oh, they hate snow. It's funny. They'll put their foot right outside the door of the coop, and if there's snow on it, the foot comes right back in, and it's like,
But
going out there.
Your coop is near the forest, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's sort of in the woods, but it's right on the edge of the woods, which is nice because they get a lot of sun in the spring and fall, and they still do get some sun in the summer, but chickens have a harder time with heat than they do with cold, so it's nice if you can give them some shade.
Yeah, I have to think about that. That might be something. I've always wanted to do that, but never got as far as actually planning it. So
chickens are not that hard. They're. I mean, I think if you wanted to have a cow, you'd be talking about a really big deal. But chickens are pretty easy. I clean their coop once a year, so that one day where I really clean the coop is the only day that's really a real hard work day with the chickens. The rest of the time, you just have to change their water every day and make sure they're fed and collect the eggs. legs.
Now, gardening, getting started, if somebody has a little bit of room where they could start a garden, you talk about doing it slowly, like doing it 1 year, seeing how it goes, and then the next year maybe enlarge it a little bit. Talk about that.
Well, yeah, I think it's really important to start slow because if you've never gardened before, you don't really know what the time commitment is, what how the weather's going to affect it. So you want to just kind of like dip your toe in the water to start. I think you can get into trouble if you say, I'm going to grow all my family's vegetables this year, never having done it before. You're going to get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So to start small, and even this garden that we have, the first year it was about the size of a regular kitchen table. And the next year it was maybe 2 kitchen tables. And then the next year it was maybe 3 kitchen tables. And we just kept enlarging it, because we had started with sucker forests. So we had to, my husband had to cut the trees and pull the stumps. And I had to pickaxe the roots out, and we had to bring in the soil. So it wasn't a real easy place to start. Most people don't have quite that difficult a place to start. If you have a lawn, then you can do the no-till method. You can just put, newspaper on top of the lawn and heavy wet newspaper, not the colored stuff, the black and white pages, and put compost on top of that, and you can start that way.
That intrigued me. And also, I'm so envious. You have are they raised stone beds now?
Yeah, that's something that my husband did. When we first moved here, and when we took the sucker forest down, we did wooden beds.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to use pressure treated because that's arsenic, and we didn't want arsenic in our food. So we just used, regular wood. But after a couple years went by, the wood was rotting, and every year my husband would look out there and he'd grumble, and he'd have to go out and fix them, and they kept looking worse and worse and worse. And so one day about 20 years ago, he said, you know what, I'm just going to redo that entire bed in stone.
Wow.
And he spent 7 years working, I would say, a good 2 or 3 days a week all summer long, just finding stone in the woods. We do live in the Granite State, so we're not called the Granite State for nothing. But then it was like a puzzle because he had to have 2 flat sides, but then they weren't square, so he had to sort of match up which rocks would go together, and he dug them down into the dirt, and he just made the whole garden into stone beds. And when he was done with that, he asked me, he said, well, what would you like in the paths? And I said, well, stone would be nice. So he spent another 3 years doing all the paths for me. And I have a friend who has a nursery. I got him to grow me some creeping thyme, and I planted creeping thyme in between all the stones, which helps to keep the weeds down. It doesn't totally keep the weeds down, but it's because it's a little hard to weed in between rocks.
Yeah.
But it's gorgeous. It's just an absolutely beautiful garden, and it's a wonderful workplace to be. It's a wonderful place to spend your time.
Canning seems daunting, but it does take me back. My grandmother used to can amazingly, but isn't that a lot to take on? I probably spend 5 or 6 days a year canning, which isn't a lot. And it gives me all the spaghetti sauce that I want for the whole year. And then also the stuff that's on the cover of Celeste Garden's Delights is tomatoes that's not boiled down into a sauce. And I think canning, there's a couple of tricks to canning, definitely, and people are intimidated, I think, by it because if they haven't ever done it before, because, you think about, this could go wrong or that could go wrong. But if you really follow the directions in my book and you pay attention to the couple of tricks, it's really not that difficult. It's just, it might be a full day of work, but, people go to work for a full day, so they're used to a full day of work. So if you take a day on the weekend and say, I'm going to make spaghetti sauce today, you could I sometimes will can maybe 18 pints of spaghetti sauce in one day. Wow.
So that's 18 meals.
Yeah.
It's just my husband and I, so a pint is enough. Yeah. But that's 18 meals that I won't have to cook. I'll just be able to come home, open the jar, heat it up, cook up some spaghetti, and we're all set.
It's been so delightful talking to you. How would you like to see Celeste's Garden Delights used by someone who might pick it up?
I see my book as a how-to book. I think it's a guide for people wanting to learn how to live more sustainably. So if you want to have backyard chickens, it will tell you how to do that, how to set up the coop, how to set up their run. If you want to get into canning, it will tell you how to do that. If you want to grow your own vegetables, it will tell you how to do that. It's got a little bit of cooking in there. It's got a lot of ideas, and I I wrote it because I realized over the years that wherever I went, people were asking me questions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do this? How do you do that? And then one day, a couple of Julys ago, 3 different people on the same day asked me to write this book. And I thought, all right, I guess I better put all these ideas down. So I hope that people will take this book and use it as a guide, mostly.
Yeah. Well, I certainly loved it. Anything else you want to add before we conclude?
Well, I also do a blog, and
Yes.
that is at my website, which is CelesteLongacre.com. So people can get ideas there. They can go maybe and look at my blog to see my writing style, see if they like it before they look for the book, if that's something they're interested in. But, I'm hoping that people will be able to take a little bit more control of their lives with this book and with this information, and also support their local economies in a bigger way.